I'm Nick Schillingford coming to you from the Urban Cabin Studios in South Minneapolis with this interview. While our guest is speaking, we'll be showing some clips from their time in the occupied West Bank. So, so on Socialist News and Views, we let folks introduce themselves. Do you want to just tell our audience who you are?
Yeah, so my name is Yolanda Roth. I am a social justice activist. I'm originally from Wisconsin, but I've been in the Twin Cities for, I don't know, since 2008.
Nice.
Yeah, so yeah, I really love it here. I'm a singer, songwriter, and general lover of humanity. So yeah, that's me.
Well, glad you're here, and we need you here. So appreciate it. My wife and I just the other night. Well, actually, I guess it was like a week ago or something now. We went to a screening of the film No Other Land.
Yeah.
And I had heard of it, but I was kind of like, huh, it kind of disappeared. It's about Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. Obviously, to be clear, not Gaza, which obviously is getting all the attention right now from everyone. But occupied West Bank folks being forced off their land, through the Israeli courts, so-called courts, and by Israeli settlers, and they're all backed up by the Israeli Defense Force, so-called the occupying force there. And now the film No Other Land was a co-production between Palestine and Norway. And it won a bunch of awards. It won the 2024 Panorama Audience Award for Best Documentary Film, won the Berlinale Documentary Film, and won Best Documentary Feature Film at the 97th Academy Awards, which people are familiar with. Yet it hasn't had any like serious distribution in the US because of soft censorship, so called, by the administration. So yeah, that I was like, well, that explains why I suddenly stopped hearing anything about it. But you were just in the occupied West Bank and saw firsthand, what the settlers are doing, what the state is doing, and what's going on there. Can you just talk about your experience, what you witnessed while you were there, and tell us about your experience?
Sure. Sure. Yeah, so just to start, uh a Jewish friend of mine let me know that while she was in Israel, she ran into a rabbi, Rabbi Arik, and Rabbi Arik has an NGO that the name of which I'm going to slaughter, and I feel terrible about it. But I think it's Tazak Zedek.
Okay.
And he mentioned that they have the NGO does a protective presence in the West Bank. And he mentioned that he was looking for activists from outside of the country because they really need to spread the word about what's happening in the West Bank. All the attention is on Gaza, and
Mm.
understandably so.
Right.
Um, but he's really feeling like the West Bank, there's a real opportunity to change what's happening. So he really wanted, and then there's also the fact that having persons from outside the country doesn't just spread the word about what's happening there, but it also gives them additional capacity
Mm.
because there's so much um, land to try to cover, and it gets to be more all the time because when Palestinian people are forced off their land, then they're moving, right? They're
Right.
migrating to a new place, and not
Mm.
everybody leaves at the same time,
Right.
right? Some people will try and stay, so that's just more area that needs to be covered that they don't have enough people to cover. And recently, with the uptick in the violence, where they used to have a couple of people per village, they now need three, four, five people
Mm.
to try to mitigate the damage being done, the threats, the intimidation, the abuse, the violence that's happening there. So it's just, um, yeah, it's really upsetting. So
Right.
I'm gonna try not to get emotional about it.
Well, it's emotional.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, without
So,
question. So anyway, I landed in Tel Aviv, took the train to Jerusalem, and Rabbi Eric picked me up, and we went right out into the field.
hmm,
So like directly as soon as I landed in country. Um, and I went to Mukmas first. Um, Mukmas is such an interesting area. There is village. It's about 70% American citizens, like
hmm,
Palestinian American citizens. And they spend part of their time in the United States and then another part, the rest of the time in Mukmas, wherein they have these big, beautiful houses.
hmm,
And they the village there is um when I was there was largely empty.
hmm,
People had left partially because of the escalation in violence, um, and partially because some of them were just they were spending time had already planned to spend time in the United States.
sure.
Um, so just down the road, down the hill from the Mukmas village with largely American citizens, American Palestinian citizens. They the It's the Bedouin community. Um, so from we're posted at the top of the hill where we can see down into the Bedouin village
Oh, sure.
as the activists. And then when I arrived that morning, there had already been some overnight violence,
Hmm,
wherein the settlers had begun shooting um, down into the village. They were shooting at um, shooting at activists that were trying to stop them as they were sabotaging the infrastructure in the darkness. So they had like um, they were tr there were several of them, and they were just like cutting water lines, sabotaging water tanks, putting holes in them, like cutting electricity, um, just to houses, and um, yeah, so when the activists were alerted to what was happening, they like made their way over there with like a little bit of light from their phones
hmm,
to see what was happening. And then the that's when the gunshots began. And so I got there and was just, talking to them about the violence they'd experienced overnight. And shortly thereafter my arrival, we saw that the Bedouin community, the settlers had a couple of settlers had brought their, I want to say sheep
hmm,
to into the Bedouin village
okay.
to graze on their land and to knock things over and to just generally intimidate and destroy things. And so we headed down to like videotape what was happening and uh, the the police, such
Sure.
as they are,
Right.
and the military. And we have to be careful because the two of us that were there doing protective presence in Mukmas at that time are American citizens. So if we um, file a complaint or if we speak directly to the police, they will kick us out of the country.
Oh, okay.
So we run the risk. So what we can do is like we have like our on the ground chat that we're all in, and we take videotapes and we send it to those of us who are on the ground but are Israeli citizens,
Hmm.
so that they can call the police. There's sometimes a language barrier, although in this particular case there wasn't because the person I was with actually does speak Arabic and could have spoken to the police as well, although there was a little bit of a language issue, but not a big one.
Sure.
Um, there, but again, being American citizens. So we like send the videotape and that or the videos of what's happening, and then like Rabbi Eric or someone else will send it on to the military, and call the police, that sort of thing. And then when the police come, we could not be on Bedouin land
Mm.
because like a month, just about, well, a couple of weeks before we arrived, the military had designated this Bedouin village uh, for protection and safety. They had said that this land was off limits.
Mm.
And they had if they show you this document that they have saying
Yeah.
that this land is then you will be trespassing. Once you've seen it, you're trespassing and they can arrest you. So the beauty of what they've done is that they have said that this land, you can't be on it, but the only people that they want to keep off of it is the activists,
Right.
not the settlers.
Right. Right. Right.
So yeah, it's really frustrating. And because it's their belief and they've said it, that the activists we are the problem.
Mm.
We're the reason that the settlers are escalating, that we are that our presence to trying to protect is just making the settlers act out more.
Right.
And it's crazy because like there was no one there when I should say there was no activist there when put they beat a Palestinian and his wife
Right.
so that they could take their sheep um and their goats. There was no one there when that escalated. There was no one to protect them. And it clearly still happened. So yeah, it's frustrating. And I've seen firsthand how angry and how much bravado there is with some of the settlers when they see that there's an activist present in the village, or when villagers come and get us or call
Mm.
us and ask us to come. Um, and they don't like it when we show up. They don't like it when we put cameras in their face and, to document what they're doing.
Right.
They get very angry, and you can sometimes see just how much it irks them and how they're about to escalate because they don't appreciate us having the nerve to be there.
Right.
Um, so it's not as if there's not a little bit of truth to what the military and the police are saying. It's just that if they didn't do it that day, they just do it some other day when
Right.
we're not there. And I really had to wrestle with that. It really was upsetting to think for a minute we might be putting these villagers in more danger because they're so upset with our presence there. And
Right.
they have tried to bribe landowners and said, hey, if you stop letting activists come on your land, we'll leave you alone.
Mm.
We'll leave your land alone. We'll just, we'll move on to
Right.
the
Right.
other land and harass them.
Right.
But just stop giving them, safe haven, stop giving them any place to headquarter.
Right.
Um, yeah, so we know that like our presence just drives them nuts. Um, and the violence that they've inflicted on some of the activists. Um, it's pretty horrific.
Right.
So yeah, I did not know this prior to coming into the country, and Rabbi Eric does not talk about it. But I did find an article where a month before, in June, I should say, sorry, not a month before, but in June of
Sure.
this year, um, some some of the settlers surrounded Rabbi Eric and beat him, broke his back and his neck. And he's like still out in the field doing this work.
That's that's something else.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, he's moving a little slower, but he's still
Right.
out there doing it.
Right.
Um,
Well, and and when they're firing bullets at, at activists, that's what is that going to, what kind of thing is that going to lead to? Nothing good.
right. Yeah, definitely. In Duma, I did it a couple of days in Duma, and it's another Bedouin community.
Hmm.
They relocated there because they had been chased off of their land prior. So in this new village that they've made, and that that activists have really tried to help by providing fencing as much as they can afford, and
Hmm.
as the NGO can afford. So providing fencing and trying to block off land and safer areas for their livestock to graze, and um, their and for their families to stay. This this village, while I was there, there's a down the hill from that village is where we were headquartered in Duma.
Okay.
And there are some of the Palestinian men stay there with us, and they like to help with protective presence. And I didn't realize, all I saw was the area where we were headquartered.
Hmm.
Um, and like the settlers would come there, right? And like try, just destroy the fencing, bring their animals, bring their not very healthy looking sheep
Right.
and goats, because they don't really know how to take care of livestock. They only have them to harass the
Right.
Palestinian people. So they would bring them in about 5 a.m. or so, and they would, wake everyone in our headquarter area up by yelling and doing like really loud prayers, and right at the fence line. So they are trespassing because they had to go through another fence to get there, but there's trees, they're growing trees there, the olive trees and the oh my gosh, what are the other little trees that they or the other trees that they grow there? Um
Almonds or something, or no?
uh
Olives and
these particular ones were, it'll come to me.
sure.
But olives and like another tree there, and they were, having the animals destroy the trees because they're eating
Hmm.
the leaves and everything like that. So that's the whole purpose of it. And so I woke up to find one of the Hilltop Youth. Are you familiar with the Hilltop Youth?
No, not exactly. No.
So it's some young men who are they're really pretty radical. I think the first thing I read about the Hilltop Youth was a 2014 murder that took place, where the Hilltop Youth had kidnapped a Palestinian man and then later killed him.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, so they have a history of being pretty violent, obviously, and radical. And I want to say the United States said that they were or a terrorist organization at some point, but it's
Hmm.
hard because it's not like they have a page where you can sign up.
Right.
Um, and no one's really sure how the money is. Well, I'm sure someone knows, but no
Right.
one's really talking about how the money gets to them. And Um, so the thing, what we know about them is that military, some of the Jewish settlers have done their military service, and they come back and train these young men, these boys, with what they've learned, and they bring like their weapons that they learn to use, these military guns and things, with them, and they train these young men on how to use them. They train them in like different like fighting, different ways to fight and like different things.
And these were some of the main people that were harassing people.
Yes, yes. So this is who we would wake up to at about 5 a.m. when they come with their animals and they make incredible noise and they wake up all the people because they just want it to be as uncomfortable as possible to
Right.
remain there. And so that's what I first, when I spent the night in Duma the first night, that was what I woke to. And so then of course we videotape because they're trespassing, and we like, send the videotapes where they're supposed to go to the military and to the police.
Right.
And they're there for a couple of hours. They brought they brought usually it's one gentleman or one young man, and then he'll call for help sometimes, bring other people, other settlers there. Um, and then later on in the day, um, the Palestinians had brought us lunch.
Okay.
And um, one of the gentlemen that brought us lunch got a phone call from his son, who's maybe 10.
Hmm.
And his son says, the settlers are here in the village. Um, and we need help. Mom's really scared. Everyone's, upset. So the elders and the parent and the women and the children are back in the village. So the other activists and I decide we're going to hike up to the village, and see what's going on. We get there. We see that there's two settlers and that they're grazing on the land and that they're sitting on top of like the electric power box that powers the village. And so we're videotaping them, and then they get really upset about having like cameras in their face and being challenged in any way. They So they decide, instead of staying out of the village proper and just on the land of the village, that they're coming into the village where all the kids are and all the women are and the elders. And so that's what they do. And they bring all of their animals in and they start wreaking havoc. So we the one gentleman, this is in the video on my page. The one gentleman I did not notice it immediately, because I was a distance away, and there was like the crossbox was like blocking it, but he had like a large gun.
Right.
And that was obviously the reason that the villagers were so upset and that they called us in the first place. So it was just like, I have never seen someone walk around babies with a giant gun before. Like I could not reconcile in my mind how you intimidate a village that way, and like knowing that these babies are running around and have like no idea what's happening, and terrify people. It was disturbing. Um, Even though it's more commonplace there than it should be.
Right.
Um, so they spend the next couple of hours while we try to keep them away from the people, um, and keep them from sabotaging the water tanks and things like that. They spend the next couple of hours basically wrestling with us to like sabotage the tanks, to have their livestock like running over everything, going into into the houses of the Palestinian people. Like, just by the time it starts, so it's just kind of a wrestling match back and forth until evening, when they wouldn't be able to see their livestock anymore. So the sun goes down, so they take the livestock and leave. We go back down to the um, we go back down to the headquarters, so back down the hill to where we had been initially, and I hear a loud buzzing,
Mhm.
and I turn to the other activist who's very experienced, and I say, "What is that?" And they said, "Oh, it's a drone. The settlers have sent drones to see where we are at and what we're doing." So I'm like, "Well, where is it?" Like it's so loud. And then he points it out, and the money that it has to cost to procure a drone like this. I I had no idea how incredibly well financed these settlers are. Um, that that drone was amazing. I It looked like a friggin' UFO. Like it
Mhm.
was I was just
Wow.
like, what in the world? Yeah. I prior to this, I didn't I did not understand the scope. Like in my mind, it was, really radicalized, really um people who just felt really righteously about land and who it
Mm.
belongs to. And even though I can't personally relate to why they feel the way that they feel, like I thought that I understood, but I did not understand. Like this is not some group of like activists. This is not just like grassroots. This is very, very well financed.
Mm.
So um yeah. So we knew that they were angry. They had called for backup while they were in the village. So other people were started arriving on their vehicles, in their off-road vehicles, other settlers. So we knew that they were really unhappy with the way that um, struggle had gone down. They had not accomplished all the terrorizing that they had intended to accomplish, and they were going to be looking for some vengeance. Like it was very clear, you could feel it in the air. They were planning something. So that night, we, stayed up in shifts. Like I was super wired, so I stayed up, then did like the first shift, and there, it was took about an hour after the drone was gone, and I hear the off-road vehicles coming. They're ramming into the fencing. They're, hitting the water tanks. They're looking for ways through the fence to come onto the like compound area where we are. Um, so yeah, we a couple of the Palestinian gentlemen had stayed up with us or stayed up with me.
Mm.
They didn't need to, like I didn't ask them to, but they just did. And so we went, we had just gotten some really big, really great flashlights um a couple of days before. In fact, I actually brought them in from Tel Aviv. Um and like had delivered them to Rabbi Arik. So they ended up in Duma, and so they were there when I got there. And so we used the flashlights and went out to see, so there it is, like a load of off-road, bunch of guys in off-road vehicles, and we're like flashing flashlights at each other and whatever. And they're just like, when they saw that we were all there, I guess they determined that we weren't the ones that they wanted to harass at that moment, so they drove off. And then a few minutes later, we one of the Palestinian gentlemen gets a phone call, and we find out they're in the village in one of the houses of the so they're basically just there harassing the children. They didn't call us until after they'd left, because they were too afraid um to call while they were there. So they called, and they're like, they were here, like going into the houses, sitting down, acting like it was their place, which is they do fairly commonly. Like,
Right.
I mean, usually not right in the house, like in the
Right.
village or whatever, but yeah. um, just kind of pushing around the kids or whatever. And yeah, it was pretty upsetting. And then on the chat, I had seen that the ground activists on the ground were blowing up the chat pretty much all night.
Mm,
And apparently, in Taipei, in Duma, in Mukmas, in like all of the villages, they just decided they were gonna like storm every village. Everybody was everybody was basically paying the price for the fact that they decided that they had just gone into Gaza, which really I did not know how that would ripple effect in the West Bank,
mm,
but it really did. Like they escalated so much that week. I was there. It was incredible. Um, so yeah, they just the fact that things hadn't gone the way they had intended them to go in the Duma village, they went kind of crazy
took it out on everybody.
on everybody.
Collective punishment. It's what they're
Exactly.
it's what they're good at.
Exactly. Yeah, I yeah, it was a lot. That was a
No, it
lot.
is a lot. It's a dramatic experience.
It was, yeah. Yeah. That was the last night that I spent out in the field. I went back to Jerusalem the next morning. I spent a little time in Taipei. Uh, it was just, but then I went back to Jerusalem, and really had to like sit with myself and kind of like decide what I was going to do. If I was going back out into the field after like a day of rest or whatever. And I had decided, after talking to my family who really wanted me to come back, um,
Mm,
that I was gonna go back into the field. Like I had a conversation with a couple of the activists, while I was in Jerusalem, and really talked about how upsetting it was to watch them come into the village, and like the feeling of guilt that I had, that what if they wouldn't have come into the village if we hadn't like been there
right,
challenging them. And um I just was feeling incredibly guilty. And they kind of sat with me and talked to me about it, and really like they were like, here's all the things that happened when no one was there.
right,
Here's, this gentleman was murdered in the field in Duma, murdered in his own field when there were no activists there. That was, I had heard about um the gentleman and his wife that were hospitalized, that because that had just happened like a couple of days before, and there were like no activists were there.
right,
There is, even if they hadn't come in while you guys were there, they were going to come in later. They would come in that night when no one was there. They were going to take advantage of those people regardless. Like they made
right,
that clear. That's what they do. That's their MO. So I really, once I was able to kind of think that through and reconcile that, I decided, I was going to go back into the field the next day. Um, and that evening, I went, or I'm sorry, I was going to go back in the field after about 24 hours. So I gave myself a break. Um, I slept overnight.
sure,
I got up in the morning. I had been invited by a rabbi to have brunch with them. I went and had brunch. She lived just like 3 blocks, so a short walk from where I was. And so I went there and I met some other Israeli citizens. They were really lovely people. And um, some of them knew each other, some of them didn't. Apparently, this rabbi has Rabbi Susan, she has these brunches and just invites people
Mm,
and that she's just met, that friends of her friends have just met, like a lot of strangers just file in and like have conversations about whatever's happening, have lunch. So I wasn't really sure what I was in for, but when I
right.
got there, they were having we had like a brunch and then there was like this all of this conversation, debates and so on and so forth. And eventually it all ended up somewhat focused on me
Mm,
and asking me like what I had been doing since I got there. So I just like I wasn't sure how they would take it, but I
right.
told them that I, actually had been in the West Bank for a few days and this we were doing protective presence and just kind of like waited to see what the fallout would be.
Right.
And and there were a lot of questions, a lot of questions about like why, you
Right.
know, why did the United States care what's happening there? Like were, they were feeling, was I judging them for not being there out in the
Mm,
field doing what I was doing? Like just a lot of like um thoughts, feelings, concerns, questions. Like and that conversation just kind of ensued from there. There was a lot of interesting debate, a lot of questions, a lot of um why do I think, that Americans feel are judging, Israeli people so harshly? Why is the news being presented the way that it's being presented? Like,
mm,
you know, there's information we don't have. There's so just like, do they know that not everybody is on the side of Bibi? Do we know
mm,
that like um there was a protest actually while I was there that was in kind of an anti-Bibi protest. It was like an end the war protest. There was, as well as a bring back the hostages
mm.
protest. So it was very there was a lot, a lot of conversation. I was fielding a lot of questions. It was very different. Anyway, that evening, they offered to take me to the wall, so we walked to the wall. And I thought, great, in the morning I'll go back out into the field. And I ended up in the walk to from the wall back. I ended up like doubling over in pain. I
Uh-oh.
that I had like never experienced pain like that before, and I have Crohn's disease. We know pain.
Mm, right.
So I ended up in an ambulance and in the emergency room. Um, so that was my experience there. I ended up flying home. We couldn't determine what was wrong. We thought it was my kidneys. There was a lot going on.
Right.
But yeah, so I ended up flying home the next day, sadly. And
Yeah.
that was in my experience.
And you're feeling okay at the moment?
Yeah.
You're not
At this moment I am doing pretty well once I
okay
got back and
physically.
right, right.
Like
Yeah,
the
the dreams have stopped also. I just
hmm,
that was a difficult part to get through, but yeah.
a lot of dreams about the events and
Yeah.
trauma.
Yeah. I mean it could have been a lot worse. Like I'm not saying no one should feel in any way sorry for me in any way. Like
Well,
I'm fine. Like other people while I was there on the ground experienced worse than anything I saw.
right.
Um, and like I just was able to see the videos of what they were experiencing while processing what I was experiencing. So, um, yeah, so like, but yeah, the dreams are pretty disturbing.
I bet. Yeah. It's it doesn't just go away. And I was gonna say I saw this journalist in Gaza at Dropsite News that said, we may have survived physically, but we didn't survive mentally. And so it's like, there's this mental piece that, you know, it you can't see it really. We can't even see it ourselves. It's there, and we're trying to manage it. And it's when you're in a situation like that, a lot of the stuff is outside of your control. So you feel a lot of helplessness and guilt and all these other things you were talking about that
Right.
that you but like I've talked about with other people, you can never know things that you prevented from happening. Like you'll never know, like if you prevented something worse or different, bad in a different way. You'll never know what was prevented from happening, or what was lessened. So it's we don't have a crystal ball. You can't beat yourself up about that stuff. You talked about the kind of how it was different than you were thinking about it. Was there anything else that you wanted to say about when you were there, like what it would when it was staring in the things that were that you might not understand just watching a video, or hearing about it, but like actually being there? Was there anything else you wanted to share about that? Otherwise, I had a couple other things.
Um, yeah, I don't, I think the thing that really struck me was I really tried to put myself in the shoes of settlers, and like why they were so dedicated to
Mm,
taking any patch of land that the Palestinians found for themselves. Like
right.
why they would like risk their lives, why they would kill other people to just stand on some land. Like I I really wanted to like to try to get that,
Mm,
like the motivation, and I just I can't. Like
right.
I can't feel what they feel that makes them behave the way they behave. Like there's no piece of land that I have that kind of dedication to, or that connection to, that I would take someone's life so that I could stand on that land, or
Mm,
harass someone until they left. I and I feel like maybe that's like a bit of a flaw in me, that I can't empathize to that level, because I've not run into many situations where I couldn't empathize to some extent with what,
right.
even opinions that I vehemently disagree with.
Right.
But this is one where I just have a block, and
Mm.
I don't get that.
Does it make you think about I mean, has it made you think about does it make you think about more about settler colonialism in the United States, experiencing that? Is that something you've had a chance to think about at all, or is that
Right. Um, right. When I mentioned this feeling to the people in that I was having a lively conversation with in Jerusalem, um, they said, "Isn't it the same as what happened in like America? Isn't
right?
it the same as?" And I said, "Well, I wasn't part of that either,
Right.
right? Because I'm a black woman. Like that's not
Right.
how it happened for us."
Right.
Um, so I don't like I can't identify with that either.
Right.
Um, but if you're saying that to say that like the United States is no better than
Right.
Israel, like I'm hardly going to argue that with you.
Right.
Like,
Or does it, I mean, does it make you think about, like, what it might have looked like in the US, that you might not think about? I mean, especially the same situation, the settlers backed up by the US government with probably all the latest toys and tools of the day, just harassing anyone they could get in the same space as. I mean,
I
I'm sure there's this, it was the very similar situation in a lot of ways. And
yeah,
the fact that it's happening right in front of our eyes. And again, a lot of this stuff is live streamed, or if not live streamed, at least captured and videotaped, and we're seeing it.
Yeah.
People can't, nobody can say they don't know what's going on. Once they see this stuff on video.
Yeah, no, you're right. This I will say when I saw some video of what happened in Chicago, with the with ICE going into buildings and just taking people out of their
Mm,
apartments, when I saw I it did yeah, it did remind me of like the atrocities happening in the West Bank and in Gaza, and it did remind me that like we that they clearly people here, some of us really think that you can own land to the extent that no one else can step foot on it, that some of us clearly feel that way here and feel righteously justified in brutalizing other people.
right.
So yeah, I will say the last week and a half or so, I've definitely been thinking about that. I've definitely been.
Well, when you mentioned, yeah, when you said pointing guns at babies at the beginning of the interview, I mean, that was the first thing I thought of, was them, rappelling down into that apartment building and bringing folks out front. That was the first thing that kind of like flashed in my mind. And it's like, uh, you know, stuff is still going on and people still think that they're better than other people. And it's pretty, um, you know, I guess it's mind blowing to some people. It's pretty, I mean, it's just disgusting, but it's like, it's still there. This whole, settler colonialism thing, it doesn't go away. I really, I really appreciate you speaking with me and sharing the experience of your trip that I'm sure you're still thinking about and dealing with. Is there anything else that you want to say about your experience or situation we find ourselves in before you go?
I will say, and I kind of contemplated, I really thought about this. People have, some people have kind of approached me, talking about things from like more of a political lens, like what's happening, and what our country is supporting happening in other countries, and specifically in Israel, and different things about like boycotts and rallies and who deserves to be in office based on their stance on Israel and Palestine. And I have to say, after being there, and it's really, really hard for me to connect to like the politics of the United States as it relates to Israel, as it relates to Gaza, as it relates to the West Bank. And I really can't engage in any of those debates and any of that righteousness and any of that, because all I can think about is how no matter who wins this ridiculous debate over like life and death, it won't stop a single missile. It won't stop a single gunshot. Won't it won't stop any of that to win some debate here in the United States. Like
Right.
it won't make any difference, and people will still die for nothing. Like I don't think that that's like any particularly wise thought or anything like that. It's just where I'm at
Right.
right now.
It's a process, like I was saying, I mean, coming back is a process, and trying to figure out how you think about everything you thought about before is a process, like reassessing everything, your hierarchy of everything, maybe, it's a it's a long process. Well, I really appreciate you, yeah, being vulnerable and sharing, and you know, it's important to, like you said. I mean, part of the point is to get this information out there that people are aware of, what's going on. Um, and yeah, that's. I mean, I saw that same thing in No Other Land. The viciousness of the settlers. Also, how people trying to help. This was mostly Palestinian people just themselves in their own villages. They get the call, oh, this is happening over here. We got to get some people over here, and we got to get some cameras over here, and we got to get some people recording over here, and anything else that we can bring to bear. Yeah, it was exactly like that. That same thing. Get up high where you can see what's going on, so you can see if there's, um, in this case, there was a lot of like military vehicles would go in because they were trying to like push this specific group of people off their land, and they supposedly had already, gone through the court process that
Right.
they can't even participate in. So, but well, I really appreciate you speaking with me. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Nick.
And that was our interview. Thanks for listening. Solidarity.
Insomma, di parte il mio risposta Africa? Che se ne va Oh, c'è una idea. Przecież workshop sytuacji.
So these settlers are grazing their goats. The larger gentleman is sitting on the ground, started collecting rocks. I imagine that was like an intimidation thing. Either that or he's intimidated by me and thinking he needs to protect himself from the camera. Hard to say.